Welcome back to another episode of the Rose Quartz Divorce Podcast. So happy to be here. My name is Diana D'Amato, and I'm a longtime yoga teacher, meditation teacher, a longtime entrepreneurial spirit, helper of whoever I can, and a mom. And also recently certified to stretch people as a flexologist. Yeah, it's really amazing work. I'm very excited about it in terms of people getting the recovery, and just wellness, overall wellness, mobility, everything that we need to keep going in this life, which is what all this is about.
Peace. Good to be on this call with you, this episode with you, teacher. Hey, everyone. My name is Steve, and I am a liberator, an entrepreneur, a father, and a friend. And I'm just excited about today's conversation. Let's get right into it.
Yeah. So, well, real quick, before we do, I did want to say our website is live now. So hop on over there, give us your feedback. We pretty much did it ourselves, did have some assistance, but I'd love to hear from people and see how it's working for them. There's a lot of content over there on Rose Quartz Divorce, and it's QUARTZ, Rose Quartz Divorce. .com. Please sign up for our newsletter. You can schedule one-on-one sessions with us, and there's lots more coming. It's unfolding as we go, because sometimes that's how you have to do life, right? You just can't wait for everything to be perfect to begin.
Sure. How you doing, D?
I am hanging in there. I'm excited to talk about this week's topic because it's something that I'm going through as well. We're going to talk about, cohabitation is
Mm,
today's topic. Yeah. So moving is known to be like the number one most stressful event in people's lives. It actually is before divorce, but sometimes they happen together. So, you've got this kind of comorbidity of stressful events a lot of times happening. So, I wanted to start talking about that. Now, I think sometimes when people first get married, they're just two single people joining homes, right? One moving in maybe with the other, maybe they're getting a new place that they're moving into. But then there are layers to this because in some cases, when things don't work out, somebody's got to move out. And it's like, who does the moving? Does everybody move? Does everybody stay? And then as we continue on the journey, what happens when you get in your next relationship and you have two fully formed adults with all their stuff, emotional and literal baggage, moving into another place. So I figured we could start at the beginning. And with your background, Stephen, I wonder, when people are moving in together, how do you counsel? What would you say to them?
Well, from an experiential standpoint, I've never done that before, so I don't necessarily know what that experience is like, other than the fact that my kid's mom and I, just a few months before we actually got married, we moved in together because the lease scenario was didn't line up with when we wanted to move to our place, and so that's the only experience that I've had when it comes to moving in with someone of whom I'm not married with. But oh, dude. Whenever
That's Pepper.
whenever I do counsel individuals who are thinking about cohabitating, um, we talk about conflict management, and we actually work on creating a document as to how how do folks manage, how two individuals would engage conflict and resolve conflict. We also even create a plan for, in the event that the relationship doesn't work out, um, is there a 6 to 12 month period that gives someone the opportunity to get their affairs in order in preparation to transitioning out of the shared space. Um, we talk about what does it look like to do ongoing therapy and counseling, or even having a relationship mentor that will walk alongside the couple during that time. Because if the end goal is to live life, until death do us part, then you need help along the way on that journey. So there.
Ooh, wait a second. Hold on. That is something we're talking about, the whole till death do us part
For sure.
thing. That always hits me so hard as part of this like loving experience, when you have a wedding ceremony, and then we bring in this topic of till death do us part, and it's like I maybe it was a romantic way to say things at some point, but I don't know, like what are we saying when
Mm,
in this ceremony of two lives joining together to create new life, whether they have children or not, you're creating a whole new life together, and then we right away have to say like till death do us part. um what does that say? What does that mean? I mean, you know I guess like the romantic version of it would implicate that you would stay together until you were old and gray and then quietly passed away, possibly together or at the same time in your sleep. Like that would be kind of the rose colored glasses version of it. But the reality is one person's probably going to pass before the other, right? So that's the parting, and with that comes a lot of grief, a lot of having to like figure things out for yourself and how that looks. And in another way, it makes me think like, was there like some implication? Because I always think of how archaic certain things are when it relates to one gender as opposed to the other. Was this a way that people thought they could get out of marriages too, or was it because there were so many diseases at the time? The time, this was, whether it was some kind of epidemic or something. I know I'm like throwing a lot out there right now, but like, what is the deal with this till death do us part thing?
Yeah, I think it's all of the above, and just to offer just a thought, a secondary thought behind "To Death Do Us Part." You raise a very important question, which I guide couples through, and that of what does this mean for you, right? Is because I agree. "To Death Do Us Part" is a big bold claim, and we as human beings are not, we don't have a very good track record with keeping our promises, right? So we have to ask ourselves the question, what does that mean? And that's why even before we get to that part, we're also working through, in the event that the relationship doesn't work out, what is the exit strategy, right? And so um, historically, "To Death Do Us Part" is very poetic, it's very romantic, it's a hopeful wish. Um, and again, like I said, as humans, we're not good with keeping our promises. And so I'm curious to hear from you. Like, what does cohabitating mean for you? What's that? What's your experience behind all of that?
Well, as an only child, there's sort of things that come along with that, as I'm used to having my own space and quiet time, and being able to kind of come and go as I please without checking with a whole bunch of people, or plan things without checking with a whole bunch of people. So, for someone who is just coming from that or built like that, it can be really complicated. I think a really good thing to do is to encourage a trip of some kind before you cohabitate, and maybe several of them, and see how you travel together, because people show their colors. when you're on vacation, even in a great place that you want to be, you really see more about how people are able to adapt, how willing they are to have you in their space. You know, different times of day when they might get more agitated than others or things that set them off. So I always think, and, not to make it like a test. Something like, if you can survive this, crazy trip in the woods, then it's safe to be with you. But like, I think that's a good litmus test, to be able to be out of your comfort zone, because living together is going to take you out of your comfort zone, um, and see how you can be with each other. But I like living. I've always had lots of roommates in my adult life. I've lived alone my fair share too, but I prefer living with people. There's something about living with someone else that helps me like rise up a little bit, where like I'll be a little more, neat, a little more like, aware of my environment and where I'm leaving things, even a little more aware of my productivity, if you're living with someone else. And I think it goes back to, we spoke in an earlier episode about the yamas and niyamas, the internal and social kind of regulators from yoga. And there's something about like eyes, eyes on you, and, not in a creepy way, but where I think it does elevate your behavior. This is one of the reasons we need each other. So, ideally you're moving in with somebody who amplifies like your best behaviors, right? So in that sense, I really enjoy living with people. I think it can be easy to get caught up in a relationship sense, not just a roommate sense, but it can be easy to get caught up in the like playing house kind of thing. Like you might have these romantic visions of what it's going to be like to have this place together. And if your visions don't match, one person wants to live one way and one person wants to live the other way. Even if we just go back to like, the odd couple or something, then we can get conflict.
Mm. And that's why it's important to have a mediator, a therapist, counselor, a mentor to walk couples through that process. So if you're in that season, to our listeners, if you're in that season of this of discerning and thinking about cohabitating, please reach out to us, schedule a one-on-one consultation with us. We would love to walk alongside you. I chuckled when you talked about when you mentioned how you enjoy living with other people, because I haven't been married for, I think, 8, 10. I don't remember how long I was married, but coming out of that marriage, which was great, we cohabitated very well. There wasn't any much drama. Like we were in alignment in many ways. But now that I'm living alone, I actually love being alone. I love having company, but I also love company saying goodbye. I love just being able to just dictate the environment, the volume, the silence, the space that I'm in. And I know it won't last very long because I don't have the gift of singleness or celibacy. So eventually, I'm going to be living with someone in the future. Uh, but I want to name for the record that living alone for me has been one of my greatest gifts to myself the past 6, 7 years.
I
I
think it's a good thing to like differentiate, like, who your, however your preference is, whichever one it is, like it's valid. You may or may not want to be alone, and it may or may not be your natural disposition. So you may have grown up in a busy household and you really value the time alone. So it may not match up with your past, but it's part of developing self-awareness, and that's a big part of growing up, and not just like getting older, but like really growing up, is examining yourself and honestly saying like, what do I want? Because the world doesn't always ask you, what do
Mm-hmm.
you want? And if what you want is to live alone, then maybe, with your partner, you live really close nearby and you can stay at each other's places, and go home if you need to, or stay as long as you want to. But I think, sometimes what happens is what you talked about is it's like a financial decision that a lot of people make, like, oh, it's cheaper to live together, we'll split the rent. And then they kind of jump over the planning part, the like, let's set out some expectations part, how do you want to live? What's your vision for living together part? Because it just becomes a financial thing that makes sense, right? And we prioritize finances over feelings.
Please hear us carefully that living together is bigger than just finances. There is layers. There are, yeah, layers to the journey of cohabitating. Do not just make your decision and or look at cohabitating as a way to defeat capitalism, to reduce your monthly expenses. There is layers. There's a culture. There's You have to massage your way into.
Yeah, it's like, if you want to split the rent, go live with a friend and
Right,
hang out with your partner,
right.
because it's very difficult to get out. And I know it's still on, but remember that show, The People's Court?
Mhm.
Dun, dun, dun. I used to love the People's Court. And I just loved like watching, these scenarios play out. And there were always very everyday scenarios, like somebody built a fence, somebody's branch is hanging over it, like, all these things. And every single show, I mean, there'd be multiple people who got into some kind of lease together, some kind of rental agreement together, and then one left, and one this, and one that. And it's very difficult to get out of that kind of contract if you're dealing with, apartments and everything. You could also like really ding your own credit and then have trouble getting another place later on. And once you're in like a committed relationship where you're talking about buying something, that contract can be harder to get out of than like a marriage contract.
Sure. And
And we need to say that out loud.
yeah, is why it's so important that you
Mhm.
have a mediator. That is why you hire us to walk alongside you doing that. And so, can we
That's
talk a little bit more about some of the stories, the experiences that we might have had or heard when it comes down to folks actually breaking that agreement and trying to separate things? What's that? What's all of that about?
Well, I can tell you, like, in my most recent situation, with my ex-husband. So we bought a house together, but because I didn't have good credit at the time to go on the mortgage. Um, he went on the mortgage, and that was not because I'm a loser. It was because I owned a small business myself. And if anyone's owned a small business, you get dinged on things like, that were in your name, even if it was only for the startup time or something. So I just didn't have the credit, but I did have the down payment. Like I was solvent. And so what happened with us was my dad was the co-owner of the house because he had the matching credit and everything. He never made any payments or anything. We always made the payments, but that was the situation. And then when we had to get out of that, it was like my ex and my dad getting out of an agreement, a contract, right? Which can be really, really complicated. So, all of it sounds good going in. Um, but I kind of like, I remember going into it and being like, well, we're going to live here forever. It doesn't really matter. And it mattered a lot. So getting out of that, my name wasn't even on the house. Right now, I had some, legal standing because of the marriage contract. I had like a 50-50 standing technically, but also technically, my name wasn't on the deed. My name wasn't on the mortgage. So I had to, really do a lot of, finessing to make sure I didn't get cut out of that. And that could have been a terrible situation. And it wasn't like we had some kind of amicable departure from each other. However, we were able to over time over time figure out a way to just split everything. When I say over time, I mean it took about 2 years to come to terms with like how we were going to split all that. Because there was, the thing of me not being on any of the paperwork, but because legally I had 50% ownership by marriage of the property. But then also my dad had 50% ownership of the house. That actually added up to my dad and I having 75% and my ex only having 25%, which we really could have like but that's my kid's dad, I'm not going to do that. But it started out where I was like, oh, I'm in a very bad situation, and then as we investigated, I was actually in a very good situation. So in the end we found that resolution. But I it was a lot of stress on both sides, going through that, and it was a hard lesson learned for all of us. And I share that story to let people know, because I think sometimes, one person does look better on paper for the banks and all that stuff. And maybe like me, like I never thought I was going to get divorced. I literally thought I was going to live in that house. It was my dream house. Until death do us part. So, I get it. I get it. But now I can tell you this story and hopefully stop somebody else from doing that, because it would have been better for me, to make sure I was on the deed at least. But we just never took that step.
I
So,
know I sound like a salesperson right now, and I keep saying this to our listeners. Please reach out to us and schedule a one-on-one consultation to make sure we hit all of these bullet points, these very important, strategic, mindful ideas to protect everyone involved in the relationship. You want to make sure we have everything in writing. I sound like a salesperson, don't I? For
no,
some,
it's a cautionary tale. I'm telling you there. And luckily it worked out. I think in my situation, we both got sick of fighting. Like it was exhausting. It's really exhausting, but but some people can keep fighting. So, you really have to protect yourself and your future self and your children and pets. And, within that situation, there were a lot of really difficult weeks, months, that I was not on solid ground at all. So yeah, please, take that as a warning. Now, I know that like sometimes people use real estate and they can build, they can fill their coffers as an alliance in a relationship together. So there's great ways, that if you're both on everything, that can work out for you, right? So, and I mean, I feel it's a little like I'm ashamed like to share this story, because I'm a smart person. Like I don't know why I made those business decisions that I made in my relationship, but I think I wanted something to. It's like that thing where you can see the potential in something, right? Like I saw, that's all I see sometimes is like I see the potential in a person. I see the potential in a house. I see the potential in a relationship. I see the potential in a puppy. And I believe, and the problem is that it wasn't mutual, you know, that, mhm, yeah. So, and that makes me sad, and it's like embarrassing to admit, that, um, and it's okay, but like my ex just didn't see that in me. I never felt that kind of thing. So we were never on the same track. And then this is the thing that I want to talk about cohabitating and also living together is like a really important thing that you have to work out is you have to have a shared vision. You have to have a shared vision for what that is going to look like for you, combined with, and this is, I don't know how else to put this, and I hope it lands, but with a shared vision, you also need, when you walk in those doors, when you're in that place, whatever it is, a feeling of coziness. That's the best way I can put it. And
So
yeah,
there should be a sense of peace when you're walking into that scenario. If there's any hesitation, any concerns, that needs to be elevated, discussed, and worked out for sure. I
yeah,
agree with you 100% anymore.
yeah. I know it's kind of a weird word, but coziness is the best way I can put it, where it's just like
Felt
you can
that.
be yourself.
Mhm.
You don't have to have anything fancy. You don't have to, like it's not based on any of the things. It's a vibe. It's a like, are you cozy? Like truly. Yeah.
And you can't
So,
teach that. It is an internal feeling. You can't.
mhm.
Every individual will have to discern and experience that for themselves. You cannot rationalize that or pinpoint that. It's unique to and for every individual. I think that's the perfect word. How are you feeling on the inside? And
Yeah,
you have to be
exactly.
courageous to name that.
And I will say, like, I just never felt that in my marriage. Like, I always felt like something was wrong with me, and I just thought I could fix it. Yeah, I thought, we would settle in, that kind
Mm-hmm.
of thing. So, and as you know, I consider my marriage a success. I do. Like, we did good things, but at the end of the day, and it wasn't like a death, but it was the death of the relationship. And maybe that's what that's all about. Maybe we could take it in this modern age as more of a metaphor and less of a like, well, you might catch some kind of like tuberculosis or something and die, and then I can move on, kind of thing. So that's what it's part. But now it's sort of like the emotional, psychological, or death of the relationship itself. And like with that feeling of coziness, I think comes along with, with things that you are skilled at talking people through because you've talked me through it, is like, you know, uh, I directly experienced that, but things like who does what, who's responsible for what, like where's the tasking set up? Like, are there certain spaces that are off limits? Does each person, or, require a kind of room or a space that nobody else will touch? How you sort of like bring things in. So something I'm dealing with right now, because I've just moved in with my new partner, is, we've been together for a long time. Like, we know each other really well. But I get the sense that upon moving into his place, and we do plan on getting an our place, in the near future, but I have moved into his place right now. And I have joked with my coworkers and friends and said, like, I just didn't think he knew I was going to bring my stuff.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. So, I've seen him kind of look like, oh, as like the bathroom counter fills up. And there used to be like three things, like a toothbrush, toothpaste, and deodorant on there. And now it's like a carousel of products. And yeah, and to some degree, like it's different as a full grown adult, that rather than moving in with somebody when you're like 20 or something, which you're an adult, but you don't have 30 years worth of stuff with you. So to some degree it's that, like at a certain age you probably have to be a little more understanding that that person's going to bring more things and things that are meaningful to them. So it's not really about letting go of that stuff, but making room for it. But I think, that's like a whole thing is just really where do you put your stuff when somebody else's stuff is there? And how to how to really just make it all fit, Stephen. I'm telling you, it's just like my actual stuff, like the moving truck hasn't even come yet. This is just the stuff that has come like via car. So granted, it included two dogs to a non-dog person, but my actual stuff hasn't even come yet. So I'm asking you, okay, like walk me through this. What do I do when this moving truck shows up and unloads my actual stuff?
Yeah. Wow. Well, of course, there are some private questions I want to ask, like the layout of the house, how big is the moving truck, those sort of things. But one thing I do want to name is that it's good that you all are already thinking about eventually finding a place that will be suitable for you all. So the good news is that this is temporary. Again, I don't know the dimensions, square feet of the house, and things of that nature. And so, with that being said, and I'm just going to throw certain questions at you for you to think about, and you don't have to answer because again, this is sensitive, information. But just think about when you think about this truck and what's within this truck that's arriving soon. Will it actually fit well and blend well with what's already in the house? Is there some things that could uh, rest in a storage unit, or do you actually need it? Uh, have you two talked about creating space for the truck to arrive, and what does that mean and look like? What is his temperament for having a lot of stuff? Uh, is he a I'm just throwing a bunch of random stuff.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, and
And
we have talked about it, and there is space. It doesn't, my stuff isn't necessarily his style, nor is his stuff my style. So we're gonna have to find, a new kind of way to move through that. But point being, it's like whoever you are, you're gonna bring your stuff, and it might be shocking to the other person, what it is, and this happened in the past with moving in with people too. Is sometimes you do just put it all kind of away, whether it's in storage or a closet or the garage, which I can do, but there has to be like some feeling of coziness too. So like I said, like that other person, and luckily my partner does have the temperament where I think he's just kind of shocked right now, and thought I was gonna like show up with the clothes on my back, and we were just gonna do it that way. But he's also kind and will help me figure out the things. And here's another part of it though, that does cause some stress. So even if you're both like willing to work on it, nobody's mad, there's no like big issue, there's an underlying feeling of stress that you do have to have a way to let out, right? So I know I've been like on my meditation practice. I've been doing some extra, like breath work, and I'm really trying to keep myself on my center, because these are the moments where you could have a fight that's totally avoidable. And the goal is to avoid that, because at the end of the day, it's all figure outable. You know, it's not the end of the world, but it is something that could cause a huge unnecessary fight. Right. So, people that like are moving in, you have every right to have your stuff, right? And find a happy place for it. And people that are on the other side of it, like, just find your center, stay cool about it. It will sort itself out. But this is like, if you're fighting about this is a red flag.
And is there hope behind that red flag? Is there a path forward, or is this a red flag to where maybe we're moving too fast, or maybe we need to consider this relationship. Tell me more about this red flag.
I think that red flag is like if you're having a real, like, actual fight about this, not just like a, ugh, kind of people rolling their eyes or something sort
Yeah.
of more minor. Maybe that's like a pink flag, a beige flag, or something like that. But I think if you're having an actual fight about, like, somebody doesn't want your stuff around, or they've moved all of your stuff out to make space for their stuff to move in, this is a red flag to me, because it's a person then who doesn't want to be in a relationship. It's a person who's over prioritizing themselves over you, and that's not a partnership either. And it's potentially, honestly, a person who just has like anger issues, or an under, like a subconscious feeling of not wanting to be in the relationship.
Yeah. And does not have the space for you.
Hmm. Exactly. So as we hear from people, I'd like to hear from our listeners, their questions about moving in together with their partners, their concerns, any kind of like stories that you can share with us, whether things went totally sideways, or if things started going sideways and worked out. That's the kind of stuff like I'd love to hear from you. And I wanted to kind of wrap things up today, Stephen, share with you something kind of interesting that I've always heard about, and it is the fact that the artists Frida Kahlo and Diego Rivera, they were married. They actually were married, got divorced, and then got remarried in that same year. So they were married twice. And they had these connecting houses. Have you heard about this?
No, this is interesting.
Yeah, so we've talked a little bit about, like, a bathroom divorce where each person gets a bathroom, and I think we joked about, like, like, maybe maybe I even need a bedroom to myself, or that kind of thing. But this is like a house. They had two separate houses, and they were built by this famous architect. I can't remember his name. It was Juan something right now, but anyway, they reflected each of their personalities. So hers was like, even on the outside, it was colors from like where she was from, and his were different, different architectural aspects and colors. And they both had their individual houses right next to each other, and they connected them by a bridge.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's cool.
Artists are, everything. Yeah, of course they thought of this. So the thing that really interested me about this, like, I had heard about it, and it's something people kind of throw into conversation, like, well, they had two houses, like, in marriage, like, should we have two houses? Ha ha ha. Like, you might hear about it here and there, and then you find out about the bridge, and you're like, okay, that they were actually trying to stay connected. They weren't like doors locked, lights out, we're in our own houses. And
Right.
the bridge, I remember reading that the architect had done that under their direction, as because they're artists, very visual thing. It was something that was supposed to represent their bond.
Mm, mm,
Yeah,
mm.
it's really, really cool. And
Yeah.
then, so then I later found out, though, too, that um, like she lived in the one house. First, they started living in the bigger house, which was his, together, and the other one was more like a studio. And then she eventually like migrated over to her house more often.
Mhm.
So so it goes a little deeper than just the like again, everything has this kind of, you could take it as like a romantic kind of, oh, is that, it's so, and it's so cool. Like, I think I could live like that, like if we each had our own little house, and we could get together whenever we wanted. But um she actually did move, into her little house eventually. And then when they got divorced, she moved back with her family, like after a while. So, and the reason they got divorced even was because he cheated on her with her sister. I mean, what are we doing? What are we doing? Yeah. But then they got remarried.
With the sister invited to the wedding.
I mean, it's like, do we have to build a third house?
No.
But some people are wild, like people like that, like creative, truly creative types. Like think of Frida Kahlo, right? Like I'm sure, like just amazing, amazing. It's just a wild kind of person or woman, that of course wild things are going to be part of her story. But so it's just interesting. So it's like, that whole vision of living together, but also needing your own space, but also wanting to be together, but also not.
Because we're
They,
complex human beings, you
that's
know?
right.
And honestly, and I know we gotta go, but honestly, that I like that. I love you, but I also want my own space, and I'm gonna come back around when I'm ready. Like I want, and like I told my partner, it's important that I have my man cave. I have my oasis where I get to just be away and do what I want to do in my own space. I'm still here, but it's important for me to have that one area where I get to just be alone. And so this story is giving me an idea to build a cottage in the backyard.
Exactly. The she hut, the man cave, these things come out of that desire to have your own space and your own stuff and however you want it with nobody touching it, but
Mhm.
also, to stay in it, right? To not just leave. But
Exactly.
sometimes, yeah, we do all need a little cozy space
For sure.
for
I like
ourselves.
that word, cozy. That's like the word of this episode. Are you cozy?
Cozy. Oh my goodness. Well, it's been fun catching up with you and chatting today on the Rose Quartz Divorce Podcast. You can find us on Instagram at Rose Quartz, QUARTZ pod. Please check us out there. My Insta is Diana underscore the underscore Huntress with 3 S's. You can find me there as well. Please look for our friend Joshua Bright, who provides the music for us. He has a lot of music available. You can search him up, and it's all incredible and really great to meditate to. I've been leaning into that lately. Just stay on my center.
Very good. Peace, everyone. Can't wait to hear from you all soon. Bye for now.
Okay. Bye. Love you. Find the stop button. I, what's funny is I actually put in a referral today to try to get LASIK because I just, it's the biggest button.